Denver is about to see an interesting test of just how people feel about marijuana 2 years out from legalization. Denver voters will decide whether to allow consumption of cannabis at designated spaces at businesses that are open to the public. Politics guy Brandon Rittiman takes a closer look.
If the voters pass this question, just about any business could try to open a marijuana use area. It doesn't have to be a bar, it could be a coffee shop or virtually anything else, but it would have to require with Colorado's Clean Indoor Air Act, which means if you want to use edibles, you might get away with an indoor space, but if you want to be able to smoke, you got to have a patio or something outside. In addition, this would impose several other restrictions, like no people under 21 being allowed in these areas, no on-site sales of marijuana, you'd have to bring it in, no use visible from the street or sidewalk, and no use between 2 and 7 in the morning. Now, if you have a business and you want to open one of these marijuana areas, it's not as simple as walking down to the city and turning in an application. You'd have to partner with what's called a registered neighborhood organization. There are more than 100 of those in the city of Denver, and working together with that group, you can come up with even more restrictions before you'd be allowed to open, like restrictions on mixing alcohol and pot use at the same time, requiring prepaid rides home for people using pot on your property, odor control, advertising, and even more restrictive hours. Now, Colorado's Constitution does discourage marijuana use openly and publicly, but it also doesn't forbid any kind of use around other people in an area that's available to the public. It's unclear whether there'd be any sort of legal case someone could mount against this if voters were to pass it, but that's jumping the shark. We gotta wait and see how Denver voters feel about it when it comes to November. For Next, I'm Brandon Rittiman.
There's a second ballot question to allow businesses to legalize private cannabis clubs. That failed to get enough signatures for the ballot in Denver. There is no debate over climate change in a class on that subject at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. No debate since the professors asked students who don't believe in climate change to withdraw from the course. UCCS says the professors were just being honest, that their online course is a place to discuss the impacts of climate change, not to debate what is the scientific consensus. And they did offer to discuss students' concerns privately. But a few of my thoughts on that. I get what the professors are trying to do here, but this sends an ugly message for a university, that it's better to banish opposing viewpoints rather than just defeat them in debate. The idea that students who are wrong about something should get out rather than get educated. UCCS has no prohibition on students who believe in creationism taking a biology class, no rule against atheists enrolling in classes about religion. Any university or any professor that does what UCCS is doing, saying that only one point of view will be discussed, I think they're missing an opportunity for education. The Washington Post is reporting today that a half dozen members of Donald Trump's Hispanic Advisory Council may resign in protest of his immigration stance. Not Colorado's Jerry Natividad. He tells me today that he is sticking by Trump, despite some of their differences. Yesterday, Natividad was on Next and said that his private advice to Trump has been to de-emphasize talk of building a wall and focus on a path to legal status for the millions who are in this country illegally. May I make a recommendation? Take a moment tonight or tomorrow and read some of the articles written by Colleen O'Connor. She loved to tell little-known stories of our community. The story of her death is all over the news today. The Denver Post reporter was hit and killed while she was walking across First Avenue at Downing Street last night. The driver arrested at the scene is likely to be charged with vehicular homicide and driving drunk. O'Connor's colleagues at the Post say that she was kind, curious, patient, the kind of person we could use more of in newsrooms and in our community. We have a link to some of our recent stories on the Next Facebook page. Boulder Police are getting phone call after phone call from reporters around America who want to talk about the JonBenet Ramsey case. December marks 20 years since she was killed. You'll often hear police say they don't talk about open investigations, and this investigation is still open decades later. So Boulder Police are refusing interviews and offering up this video statement instead.
There is no question this case has caught worldwide attention, and there continues to be speculation as to who committed this crime. Publications and movies offer many theories on how this crime occurred and who is responsible. Facts have been surmised and often distorted, which has led to many conclusions.
Investigators have processed more than 1,500 pieces of evidence in the Ramsey case, and they've received more than 20,000 tips, letters, and emails. And we know it's easy to put off a cleaning project. I mean, the U.S. government has put off dealing with its stock of mustard gas down in Pueblo since the 1940s or 50s. But they're finally getting around to disposing one of America's 2 remaining stockpiles of the liquid that makes mustard gas. It took an international treaty to make it happen, to have the 2,500 tons stored underground in Colorado finally processed. 1,300 people are working on the project, assisted by robots that will dismantle the shells that hold the chemicals. The team and its robot overlords have been practicing on fake chemical shells for about 3 years. Obviously, not the kind of thing you want to mess up.
Nervousness? No. This is what they've trained to go do. It's their job. Getting everybody aligned is really hard. And so to get to this point where people are ready, it's a pretty significant accomplishment by the entirety of the team. And it's time for Colorado. I mean, it's time to destroy these munitions and make Colorado safer, and then move on to what's next.
We didn't ask him to say next, by the way. What's next, though, is that when the chemicals are disposed of by 2020, the plant in Pueblo will be torn down, and then work begins on the other remaining stockpile in Kentucky. The team working on the project says the end product of the dismantling, the vapor that's released, is actually cleaner than the rest of our air. The chances of whether or not someone will take their own life is connected to what they do for a living. The federal government's out with a first-of-a-kind report looking at suicide rates by occupation, and it's confirmed what they suspected at a mechanical contracting firm in Denver. Our Kyle Dyer takes on a subject that could use more open discussion.
Colonels, how you doing? How are you? Good to see you.
These hellos at the start of each day could not be more sincere.
Good morning, how are you? How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good to see you. Job going good for you?
As the RK team gets ready for another day on the construction site.
How are you, sir?
Good, how about you?
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Tom Alvarez makes a point to check in with everyone.
Good to see you.
All right, guys, let's kind of wind up over here.
And then he gathers up the RK crew for their toolbox talk.
So we ask you that, please keep your eyes and ears open.
Alvarez is the safety manager at RK. Yes, safety as in not getting injured accidentally. But Alvarez is also determined to make sure his workers do not intentionally hurt themselves.
We had an employee that had worked for us, and he'd been going through some issues at home. And he came in, started divvying out his tools to people, and then he went home one night and committed suicide. Why did RK decide to do this?
Back then, Alvarez thought that colleague was changing his career. No one at RK recognized the warning signs of suicide. But that has changed over the last 2 years.
We're changing our cultures.
As RK faces the fact that construction is the #2 industry when it comes to suicide among the workforce. Now everyone is aware of the symptoms of depression.
If they see somebody not on the job, maybe 10 years ago, they would say, they write them up when they get in the next morning for not showing up for work. We've changed our culture. It's like, now what's going on in your life? And, I think that's just part of the evolution of construction too.
How you doing? Michelle Brown was approached by a coworker who was really struggling. Because of the awareness training, she knew exactly what to do.
To be able to reach out to that person and to get them the help they needed, and to be the individual that they could talk to, laugh with, cry with, it was incredible.
And Brown says that man is now thriving. Kinning, RK's executive VP, says he also knows of workers who have turned away from the thought of suicide because of the support they received at work. So the training and the toolbox talks will continue. They have to.
We're a family-owned business. We care about people's families. We want them to come to work and be able to go home from work safe.
With photojournalist Adam Vance, Kyle Dyer, 9 News.
You'll be hearing more about suicide prevention in September, the month dedicated to raising awareness. It was about this time last year that Kyle told us a similar mental health support program that operates the Denver Fire Department. Parker police found the person they were searching for last night. The driver who stopped to help police at the scene of a horrible crash over the weekend, he turned himself in to receive their grateful thanks. Daniel Reese came by the Parker Police Department this afternoon.
Critical incident. So whether it's you driving me down
It really takes more than just the first responders on these scenes to come together and help all of those people out, because someone in those vehicles is someone's mother or daughter or father or brother, and when you take those things in perspective, you want to treat them the same way that you would want your family treated. Exactly. And so we appreciate citizens like you stepping up and really helping us out and being there when we need it.
Reese and a few of the other drivers who stopped to help on the night of the crash will be receiving chief commendations, an award at a ceremony next year. Is RTD's A-line to the train to the plane working today? We don't have the fancy graphic to run for you, so we'll just tell you it's not. Again, delays of 30 to 60 minutes due to crossing repairs and a crash at Ulster. Another day on the A-line. It looks like an honest-to-God pumpkin shortage in the Springs. We'll examine the impact on beer.
These aren't just normal jack-o'-lantern seeds.
Steve Steger talks to Colorado's foremost experts on big vegetables. And pop quiz. Was this crown worn during A, a satanic ritual, or B, the predecessor to the Taste of Colorado Festival?
Hello, September. It turned out to be a pretty nice day with our average high temperature at 84. We topped out at 86 today, nowhere near record territory, and hard to believe fall's about 3 weeks away. Well, we're tracking some isolated thunderstorms that are popping up around the metro area. They've held off for much of the day. A brief shower, rumble of thunder tonight, and that's all you need to worry about. The storm coverage increases tomorrow. And storms, how about Category Hurricane Hermione? Now a Category 1 storm, winds to 80 miles per hour, making landfall. First hurricane to hit Florida since 2005. It's going to impact a lot of holiday plans through the Carolinas on Saturday and the Northeast Sunday into Monday. Northeastern plains of Colorado will see some scattered thunderstorms tomorrow, and this time tomorrow night, those storms turn heavy just south and east of the city. Tonight, isolated storms and then clearing will drop to about 55. Out east, some areas of patchy fog once again, and that was nasty this morning, wasn't it? 86 again tomorrow with about 30% chance for rain. Get you into a nice holiday weekend with a warming trend. Only isolated storms to worry about on Saturday afternoon. And hey, fall's 3 weeks away. If you are growing a large gourd, send me your pictures. I'll take cute animal pictures too.
Ah, hell no. Bristol Brewing's pumpkin beer is in jeopardy this year. The hail wiped out the crop at Venetucci Farm in Colorado Springs. It's sad for the 6,000 to 10,000 kids who go out to pick the patch each year. Sadder still for the beer drinkers who look forward to Bristol's pumpkin ale made with Venetucci pumpkins. Proceeds benefit for the farm. At this point, the brewery is looking for a backup plan. Hail spared the pumpkin patch in Jefferson County, where our Steve Steger spent the day with the good folks of the Rocky Mountain Giant Vegetable Growers Club.
Right above one awesome window cling on the back of Jim Grandy's truck is another.
We started up the club in 2006. Started right after a hailstorm. Totally wiped out my patch.
That's Jim's brother, Gary Grandy. He started the Rocky Mountain Giant Vegetable Growers Club.
To share the hobby and sport and friendship of growing giant fruits across the Rocky Mountain region. And what we do today, we shall grow bigger tomorrow.
They certainly shall.
We have a club that's 90 plus, grows every year.
Kind of like the pumpkins. To grow them this big, those 90 members go through a lot.
You give up those fishing trips on the weekend, the camping trips, because we're out here babying these pumpkins.
It is a lot of babying for a plant this big.
Now, this plant is over 1,000 square feet. It's actually the biggest plant that I've ever grown.
And that pumpkin is the only thing on the vine.
We can try to force all of this energy into production of one gigantic record-setting fruit.
When the fruit gets that big, you can imagine the problems.
On my first years, I picked up the pumpkin to move it, and I broke it off the vine right then, so it was season over right on that.
I had one last year, it weighed 1,119 pounds. Picked it up a day before the way off, had a hole in the bottom of it.
Another 1,000-pound pumpkin bent the back of Jim's tailgate. Still, they keep their eyes on the prize, a state record, something they may not know they have until it hits the scale.
What we're shooting for is that elusive 1,500-pound pumpkin, and the rumor has it there's going to be a possibility of one showing up at one of our scales this year.
For Next, I'm Steve Stager.
Tonight, we learn Taste of Colorado has its roots in a kind of trippy festival through the streets of town. Have you ever climbed a 14er? Aren't you adventurous? This baby climbed too. And are you lonesome tonight? All shook up without the Elvis drawing you left at a grocery store in Arvada? It's now or never to retrieve it. Police hope they can return to sender. Someone walked into the Natural Grocers in Arvada and walked out without their Elvis. An Elvis painting was one of several items left behind. If you can describe the rest of the loot, Arvada Police will let you have it. Hey, if this is your Elvis drawing, get on it. Arvada Police only hold found property for 30 days, and we would hate for this gem to be destroyed. The most Colorado thing we saw today is a baby climbing 14ers. Bryn turns 1 at the end of the month. She's already been to the top of 2 14ers. Her parents obviously rendered some aid in the process. Her dad, Chris Baldwin, has climbed 38 of Colorado's 14ers. He carries Bryn, big backpack full of food and water, sunscreen, diapers, even a changing pad, all the way up to the top of the 14ers and back down. Today, he told us about the moment that they reached the top of Gray's Peak last month.
When we crested the top and the view from the other side of the mountain came into perspective, I was just looking at her face, and she had this, she let this big breath of air out and just had this big sigh and smile on her face, and I'd never seen anything like it. And to see she's only 10 months old, to see a 10-month-old baby respect a view like that was pretty magical.
Chris says now before you try to take a baby up a 14er, be sure to do your research, be prepared. To parents, Chris says you need to know the trail well so that you can focus on your baby's well-being, make sure the baby has lots of water, snacks, monitor your baby for signs of altitude sickness or fatigue, make sure the baby stays alert. And if you're thinking, I don't want to take my baby up a 14er, well then don't. The Taste of Colorado is an end-of-summer tradition in our state. People standing in the sun, nodding along with the music, gnawing on turkey legs. Taste is just the latest in a long line of downtown festivals. The original was a spectacular celebration in the midst of a difficult time for America. Photojournalist Chris Hansen takes us back.
Oh, look at this one. I consider it such a privilege to get to handle these items. That's a nice one. And you know, that we get to be stewards of them. When the silver crash happened in 1893, the U.S. currency was pegged to gold rather than silver. Major crash for the Colorado economy. You know, people lost fortunes when silver crashed. So it was a pretty big deal, you know, kind of shut down the city, and they had these 4 big parades. It wasn't a food festival for sure, but as part of the first festival in Mountains and Plains, they had a theme of the silver serpent and the slaves of the silver serpent. Sally Gomberger here was the queen of the ball. She got to wear this lovely tiara, which is made from silver. The sense of civic boosterism that they had back then, you know, and you know, William Byers and all these people getting together and saying, you know, let's do something to boost the economy and just get something going, you know, in the face of what was a very severe economic crisis for Denver and the whole state. You know, the Capitol was fairly new. I love that picture of it with the canvas and then the Capitol in the background. And you can still, you know, stand there today and see a similar view. And it brings together so many pieces of Denver that are still there. You know, the Brown Palace is still there, the Capitol's still there, Broadway and Colfax is still Broadway and Colfax.
Wasn't that shot wild, the Capitol right there through the canvas? Next, the city in our state where babies are going to work. Babies at work. Whatever could go wrong? Boulder County commissioners today adopted a new infants at work policy, allows staff to bring babies in addition to parental leave. Parents do need to have an agreement with the supervisor, and county HR director says that option may not be ideal for all employees. Still trying to picture a plow driver with a baby riding shotgun. We're open to the concept here on Next.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are.
That's the first time that we saw that. I think we may hold off on the babies for a while. Appreciate all the thoughtful feedback on our editorial about what University of Colorado Springs is doing, asking students who don't believe in climate change to leave a climate change course. Yoto Fuji says, mostly agree with your editorial, sympathize with the professor's class being hijacked. And Penny, former college professor, she's been there and she says, it was exhausting. I hear it. We'll see you next time.